Are we on?
We're live.
Okay, good afternoon, committee. It is still Thursday, the 13th of March, and we're here in the afternoon after floor, and we're meeting with Kirby Keaton, Legislative Counsel, to give us an overview of a new draft of a committee bill looking at statewide property tax assessments. Kirby, the floor is yours to walk us through the latest, and this is an update to the draft based on feedback, both from inside and outside the committee. So take it away.
Okay, so Kirby Keaton, Legislative Counsel, and as the, do I call you chair?
Only representative.
As Representative Kimball, just to set the stage for us, we are looking at draft 2.2 of the statewide reappraisals committee bill that involves mostly just responses to feedback that's been received through testimony. I'm probably going to, I've highlighted all the changes. If you have the document from the website, you can find those easily, hopefully, because I've marked those, but I will probably just walk through to get some context and a refresher for some of the other stuff too. So one of the new large changes to this draft is that there is a finding section now. So in the finding section, starting at line 14 on page 1, the General Assembly finds the final report on statewide reappraisals and property data published by the Vermont Department of Taxes pursuant to Act 68. Recommended the establishment and implementation of a statewide reappraisal system. The report included the following assessment of the situation in Vermont. And so number 1 involves a lack of available firms to conduct reappraisal work. 2, that smaller Vermont municipalities face a special challenge in hiring reappraisal firms. 3, that many Vermont municipalities struggle to find individuals to serve as listers and assessors for regular groundless maintenance. Also struggling to find reappraisal firms willing to conduct reappraisals. And 4th, Vermont has a large number of outstanding reappraisal orders, which reflects the acute challenge faced by municipalities. And then we have some subdivisions under that supporting that point. So as of December 16, 2024, 135 municipalities were actively under an order to reappraise their grand lists. 2nd, additional reappraisal orders will be issued based on upcoming results of the 2024 equalization study. And 3rd, there are 60 municipalities that had their last reappraisal more than 15 years ago, which amounts to about 24% of municipalities in the state. 4th, the average last year of reappraisal in Vermont is the year 2016, and 5th, municipalities are currently booking reappraisals for years 2026 through 2029. And lastly, in the past 10 years, approximately 19 municipalities on average have completed reappraisals each year. And then we have more findings beyond that. The Department of Taxes.
Oh, go ahead.
In terms of the difficulties for the small municipalities, see that, I think their thought is to combine some municipalities, smaller towns together so they can start help doing their reappraisals. But I don't, for large municipalities, have we asked them what their challenges are? Because I think those should be in the findings too.
Well, those were not in the report. So this is coming right out of the report. So it's the report that was issued December 16th, 2024. So that's what the findings are only quoting, extrapolating. No. Quoting the findings from the report itself.
So we couldn't add something.
We don't know what they are right now. We could inquire, but we just don't have them in hand right now.
Okay. Should we ask them all the cities and towns for that?
We could. We just, if we wanted to add that at a later date, we probably could. We just don't have it in hand now. All right.
Yeah, no problem. So the next finding we have is that the department contracted for the professional consulting services of IAAO to provide comprehensive research on best practices within assessment offices across the U.S. and to include coverage of various aspects of property valuation for taxation purposes, including reappraisals, appeal structures, property data, capacity building, and considerations for equity and anti-bias measures. And the last finding is the recommendations and research made by the department and IAAO serve as the foundation for this act.
So do you want to take a pause there, see if there's any other questions or feedback from the findings? Representative Higley?
Oh, I just, when were the findings finalized? Or when, no, when was the study finalized that the tax department did?
It's, I believe, in December, I think maybe the middle of December of 2024.
I'm just curious as to whether or not there's more current information.
You're right.
In particular, in regards to contractors that are coming into the state to do some of these reappraisals.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think we heard from Joe Remick from PVR. It was about 2 weeks ago, maybe, that the numbers are slightly better in terms of the number of towns that are under municipal orders and what's scheduled. And then we know that they're booking into 2030. So we could update it with more current information if we need to. That was just what was in the report.
That's fine. And again, I've been in correspondence with Ed Felton, who's doing our townwide reappraisal. And he has mentioned a number of younger firms that have come into the state to do some of these as well. So
Okay,
he'd be willing to testify if need be. But
good, cool. Anything else, yes? President Brannigan?
Mr. Chair, but findings, but these findings are, am I correct that these findings are to set the stage as to why we're proposing the statewide operation?
Exactly,
Okay.
yes, trying to provide context for it.
So is it to our advantage to be up to date and accurate or not? I don't know.
That is probably a decision we'll have to make. This was the easiest because it was a report that was delivered to us in December.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
I
Thank
can think
you.
of some findings I've seen in other bills that are less up to date than 2 months ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, I suppose 2 months is pretty accurate, pretty recent. Thank you.
Maybe more than 3 months ago, actually.
What's around you right away. I mean, the ledge council often says you don't even need findings.
Yeah.
And they're not actionable. It's what you do in the rest of the bill that matters.
It's true. This is definitely for putting things in a context. It's not, there's no legal purpose. On a rare occasion, there could be a legal purpose to findings. If you're anticipating litigation
sure.
and you want to put some support in there to kind of bolster your chances of winning in litigation, maybe there could be a legal purpose to findings, but in a case like this, it's just bad context.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not gonna fret over it then, but basically don't want.
Okay. So section 2 of this version is the legislative, it's the beginning of a new subchapter on statewide property assessment. And the first section under that is the legislative intent section. I had mentioned previously that this is mostly included because there's parts of this new subchapter that direct PBR to, in a kind of a subjective way, develop some standards and things. So this legislative intent would guide that discretion and those decisions that they would make later on. We have the same, I believe there were 3 last time. I don't believe there's any changes here. We have 3 in legislative intent. 3 subdivisions.
Yeah.
And then we have the establishment of the regional assessment districts. We've discussed before with this. There's no significant changes to the overall structure. There would be 12 of them. They're based on counties, except that Franklin and Grand Isle are combined and Essex and Orleans are combined. And then we get into some changes in this version. So PBR shall assign one employee to be a district advisor to each regional assessment district. That was in the last version. But we've changed some of the language to respond to feedback. So it now says, who shall facilitate the execution of full reappraisals of the district and ensure municipal grand lists are maintained accurately. The substantive takeaway is that previously it had referenced contracting for reappraisals specifically. That is now changed to the execution of full reappraisals, which would allow PBR to do a full reappraisal without a firm if for some reason it wanted to. I don't know whether that's likely to happen, but
It's just I don't feel like there's a reason to direct them in that way. It's a decision they could make, and I don't think we usually direct state government in that way.
so that's.
Representative, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I was thinking when you see valuation of utilities is one thing that stands out, with, dams and all those things. I wonder I'm thinking if you have a district advisor in each district, would they have the specific knowledge to do that in that district?
No.
Wouldn't you want somebody who's just an expert at it, who could help everybody in each of the districts?
I think that's a great question for Jill when she joins us from PBR, but in like my memory of previous testimony, the utility valuation is like, there's like two people in the country that do it and do it well. Like it's pretty, like, it's deep in the nerd vault of appraisals.
Okay, I was remembering something else. The other thing is just
Still feeling the sugar folks.
by population. There are some super heavily populated areas with only one employee to be the district advisor in that region. And I just wonder if we should really make this like apportionment, rather than by county.
Maybe. I mean, I think the very densely populated areas also have a significant amount of professional staff at their municipal level working on this. Who would,
Testimony.
sure, great. So that would be another good question for Jill when she comes up.
I would add that it says that PBR shall assign one employee to be a district advisor, but it does not put a limitation on any additional employees the PBR can offer. Yes, so there might be one district advisor in charge of, say, Chittenden County, which is going to have the most parcels. That doesn't mean that PBR has to have equal staff support overall among every district.
It says shall assign one to be a district to each regional assessment district. It doesn't say at least one, and it could be fewer.
So yeah, what I'm saying is it does mean at least one, and there could be more. This doesn't prevent more within their budget constraints.
Well, I would rather have it say happens. That's just me.
Okay, well, let's hold that edit. Yes.
What if we just said and?
I think now we're getting into wordsmithing and not policy changes. Okay.
Mine's pure policy.
I heard that, yes. It was a comment on Jim, not on your.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So moving on to some other changes in the words here. The last sentence in this subsection is in facilitating a full reappraisal, a district advisor may contract with. There was some feedback and oversee, because that seemed ambiguous to some folks, outside property appraisal firms. So I guess the intent here is not just sign a contract, but to also stay involved with that contract and oversee it. One thing I've noted.
I'm gonna let Kirby finish his full sentence. And then,
One thing I've noted down here, you'll see we've gotten some feedback about places where, a lot of places in the law, it just says lister, and in the world, practically speaking, municipalities are allowed to have an assessor instead. But it doesn't always say that in the law, but it's understood that where it says lister, an assessor could do that also. But given that I've made an effort here to put lister or assessor in every instance in this bill, and when I do conforming changes later, I'll keep an eye out for that as well, so that we have that consistency across.
I'm concerned about the liability with the oversee. I get what you mean, like, they can't just, you're thinking, don't just let them go off and do it and that's it. But if in the law, it says they oversee it, and if there are mistakes, then who's liable for the mistakes? If we even have it in the law, so it seems to me that the district advisor then becomes liable for the mistakes,
I think that's part of the point.
civilly liable.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing that the committee could decide, and if you want to try to shift responsibility to one party or another, then we could try to clarify that in the law. But yeah, the way this is written is it does place some more responsibility on the PBR for the accuracy of the reappraisals when it's a contract.
Well, you see what I'm trying to say.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree.
Okay.
Will you write down your pins so we don't lose?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. Representative Messlin?
Yeah, thank you. I thought, I may have been mistaken, but I thought when it's reappraisals not only done, it has to go back to the town, and the town has to agree and accept it. So it's on the town, but I may have been mistaken. So municipality.
With this construct, I mean, the district advisors have some ability to direct towns when it comes to the grant list. If there is some kind of controversy that this draft does allow PBR to
Okay,
direct
but
what
it's
to do.
PBR, it's not the reappraisal firm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
How do you live with that?
yeah.
Madam Chair, I don't see any in this section C or even afterwards, any responsibility on the municipal listers or assessors for any part of the reappraisal. Is that correct?
More or less. I mean, I'm not as intimate with the process as you are, but I imagine there's some communication and some like it's with grand list maintenance, for instance, right? Like they are responsible for that. And so I can only imagine that there's got to be some overlap between that and reappraisal, So I think there might be some, but I think that yes, the bulk of it is left to PBR and the district advisor to figure out.
Okay, again, there is a lot more to it. I mean, when you appraise with a firm, there are things in the contract that are required by the listers or assessors to do. So I don't see anywhere in here where, are they just going to be able to tell the listers and assessors what they can? That might be a question for Judge as well. But I just don't see any piece in here, but we can get the answer to that.
Is that in current statute though, as how it would work?
As far as, you mean?
Like how current law operates, is that in statute or is that just how people?
I don't
figure
know.
out?
I'm just talking about when you, have a contract with an outside appraiser. In that contract, there are provisions that they ask you to do as listers.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
okay.
One thing that's relevant, we'll get to it later, but there is a stakeholder group here to kind of sort some of this stuff out. The PBR is going to have to call together, and then I'm sure that's going to involve
Okay.
the listing community. Okay, so we have subdivision 1 there. There was a word change here where it previously said as they see fit, something like that, and this is deemed necessary as a change. Subdivision 2, a district advisor shall provide training and technical support. This is very similar to what's being done now, and that would continue. And then we get to the standard guidelines and procedures. This is what I mentioned before about some of these details that you've heard a lot of testimony on that PBR would have to figure out, especially when it comes to the data collection and stuff like that. And you heard about IT systems, I believe. So the language says PBR shall establish standard guidelines and procedures for regional assessment districts, including rules for contracting with third parties to conduct or assist with reappraisals, including standard reappraisal contract terms, standards for the collection and recordation of parcel data, requirements relating to information technology, including standards for data software contracts and computer-assisted mass appraisal systems. I would call out that number 2, I think, is probably a lot. It's a short sentence, but there's probably a lot there as far as the details. And then we have a new area to establish standard guidelines and procedures, and that is standardized practices for a full reappraisal, including cases in which physical inspections are unnecessary and how technology is to be utilized. So the goal here is, well, a couple things here. One, there was feedback about what does full reappraisal mean. So this allows PBR to define that better. Secondly, this opens up wiggle room, so to speak, for PBR to identify when physical inspections aren't needed, because I think there was some testimony and concern that since it's kind of left unsaid, maybe the idea is having a physical inspection for everything. So this language lets PBR kind of call when it's going to be necessary, and then it opens up the ability to not have physical inspections as much. And that's what the technology provision here is meant to get at as well, where technology could be used in the place of physical inspections. Subsection B is about the schedule for reappraisals every 6 years. That's not changed. Subsection C is just moving current law about utilities over to this new subchapter. Nothing new other than the listers or assessors language there on page 6, line 8. And then we get into some of the appeals related sections of this. The Regional Board of Civil Authority. The establishment in the first sentence is the same, but then there's a new sentence here that says a Regional Board of Civil Authority shall have the administrative assistance of a district advisor employed by the Division of Property Valuation and Review. This comes from feedback questioning what these currently the BCAs do a lot of work. This regional BCA is going to be needing to do a lot of work, and who's going to help them? The only answer that we have under our current system or the way that this is set up is, well, I mean, district advisor is, and that adds more to that person's plate, but that's how the bill addresses it. I would add that I purposely phrased this so that it says a district advisor. I did not tie it to necessarily the district advisor for that regional assessment district. And I did it for reasons similar to what we were talking about before, about some regions are bigger than others, and maybe people need to move around and help. So don't want to tie a specific employee to this, to give some freedom for PBR to move people around if they need to. And in fact, if you like that idea, we could think of that when it up above and not specify one district advisor. It could be more of a group effort. If you wanted that kind of flexibility, or if the department were to testify that would be nice. So just putting that out there, but that's why that's phrased the way it is.
Can I ask a question about something that's not the change? Just about the.
If it's the section. that
Yes,
we're
it
on.
is the section. Well,
Absolutely.
it's, well, the next section, sorry.
Let's finish this section.
We're finished with sub A. I just moved back up in
No,
case.
Representative Odie is still on sub A.
So.
Sorry, Teddy.
Like it was on the screen.
So it's every 6 years, and there's staff and helpers for the staff. and they're listening to, reviews. And is it meant to be very, let's just say there were a whole lot of questions in one area in one year, because they just finished the reappraisals in that area, but they didn't, but it isn't gonna be another 4 years in another 2 areas. Can people swoosh around, those people swoosh around and help?
I mean, Jill's the best person to answer that, but I imagine that, yes, in reality, employees will, you know, a lot, these are tax department employees, these PBR employees, the district advisors. And I'm sure that they, just like in any job, you can help your colleague out, such.
Well, if that's true, I would almost think we should spell it out or say, you know, and this anticipates people being able to move to where the need is, something like that.
Can we put in the law that I don't have to help other list council people? Just for some reason, I'm just kidding.
This committee on.
Right.
But yeah. Okay, so subsection.
Representative
B.
Wozniak.
Thank you so much.
Subsection B.
Yes, for sub B, I'm concerned about the size of these regional boards of civil authority. Just the amount of towns that are going to be able to send at least one representative. There's also nothing in here of, you know, a large town could decide to send 5 representatives, and then that would give them an outsized, you know, vote block, if you will, on the regional BCA. So this is just like, and I'm now doing the thing where I'm bringing up a problem that I don't certainly have an answer to
Well, I
at
was
this
just
moment.
gonna say, I agree with you. The whole thing could get like totally out of control in terms of size and apportionment, all kinds of things. If you could spend some time thinking about, and maybe if someone else wants to jump in and join Representative Wozniak to try to solve the problem, because it's totally unwieldy
Yeah.
right now, but it's a good placeholder.
This language was modeled on the regional planning commissions. And I see your reading of it, which that just occurred to me, that a town could try to have 5 or 10 that's not how that's not how the regional planning commissions work. It was, each municipality is a member. And then they could have 5 people there, but they're only, that member gets 1 vote.
I think maybe per Representative Bodie's point on the last sub vote, we just may need to flesh this out.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly couldn't hurt to be
Gore would
clear.
have the same, Gore would have 1 person, a small town, a large, everybody gets 1.
And maybe that's fair. Maybe it's not.
Right.
My biggest concern is like 50 people doesn't work very well.
Right, and then getting you get quorum issues.
I'm not
There's a
saying I
snowstorm on
agree
the
with
other
what
side
I
of the
just said.
valley. No quorum.
Yep. So give us some thought. Thank you.
So that establishes the membership for the regional BCAs. And then there's subsection C, just about setting up some framework for how these would operate. I did not include a lot of details there either. It's just saying that there will be an executive board that they vote on, so that there's someone to run the meetings. And beyond that, there's not a whole lot here for a lot of formality. And then subsection D here is requiring these regional BCAs to follow Vermont's Administrative Procedure Act, which means that it's, quasi judicial, and there's established rules for how to relate to evidence and everything else. So that,
Sorry. This thing.
What is happening?
So is it still, having dealt with Act 250 for many years, I now have stuff to say about this. So, so the quasi judicial, how, you have to have a lawyer to show up at this, or is this very friendly? You answered this before.
I would say that it could be in between friendly and forth. Friendly is more like
What?
and court. The formality level is in between those things. As a reminder, the way that the whole structure is though, we still have grievances with your lister, assessor. If there was a reappraisal, that firm would probably be involved. That's the friendly.
The easy show up, say, go with
Yes.
your neighbors.
And then appeals from there would go to the regional BCA. And then we'll get to it, but there's one change here where under current law, you could, there's no regional BCA obviously, but there's the BCA for the municipality, and appeals can go from the BCA to either court or the Department of Taxes, property hearing officers. Change that we'll get to later is that there was feedback to not allow the court option at that point. It's less expensive for towns, was the feedback, to not allow a taxpayer to force it into court where it could be expensive and the town may have to just give up the case because it's not worth it anymore. We're gonna spend more money litigating than we're gonna get out of taxes based on this valuation. So, so to avoid that type of thing from happening, and other reasons, this changes that. So you would go to PBR first. PBR would still have the option of moving it to court if it felt like that was appropriate. But that's a change here. But so to get back to your question about formality, friendly with the grievances, quasi judicial, a little bit more formal at the regional BCA level, and then the hearing officer with the Department of Taxes, which is probably a similar amount of formality where it's not as formal as court, but still having rules, in that case, though, it wouldn't be with the board, it would be with the individual hearing officer. So different, and then court from there, potentially. So each level of the appeals process does become a little more formal. You could say
When we
roughly.
formal, it's like rule of evidence formal.
I mean, only when you're at court would that be, and also just the way that these appeals would work to the hearing officer would be, it's de novo, so you don't have to worry about, oh no, I messed up at the BCA level and because with court, when you appeal something from court, a lot of what happens at the trial court level gets preserved on appeal. And so if you mess up the trial court level, you don't get a chance again to show new facts, So you do get that in this. You do get that ability, and that's how current law works.
We have to spell that out.
It is spelled out. It's in current law and it's in this. Yeah.
I think it's an important part of this because we want people to be able to access justice on a community level in a meaningful way. We also, there's some aspects of sort of the BCA jury of your peers process that is really awkward in a small town.
That's right.
And in talking to town clerks who sort of often run those meetings, they're concerned about them as well. And then, so there's sort of that balance of like wanting easy access, which is very, very, very important. And there's also the reality that we want to make sure that communities and the state are able to defend valuations in a meaningful way, because we know that they can't always right now. And I think Kirby brought that up.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, one more quick.
No, that's what we're
clarification.
here.
Okay, well then I'm not sorry. Is there anything in here, or do we need anything in here that specifically removes the authority of the local board of civil authority to hear these appeals, or is it just implied because we're establishing the?
It's not implied, but it's also not here yet because I haven't gotten to making all the conforming changes necessary. I've been sticking to the new substance of things. But yeah, that will need to be done, and I'm gonna still have work to do on getting that together.
We still on this section?
Yeah.
So be talking about, the state declaring an emergency order. And it talks about, that if the appellant requests in writing property be inspected, for the purposes of the appeal, board shall conduct the inspection through electronic means. What does that actually mean? Because, I'm sure a majority of my constituents don't have electronic means to show the appraiser or the board the house.
These provisions relate to like the world as it existed during COVID, where there was a declared state of emergency, and people still had the ability to insist on having an inspection done when they're appealing the property valuation, but for health and safety reasons, there was this alternative option to basically allow someone to give whoever's deciding the appeal a look at the property to get to be able to decide whether the value is correct or not. And that would be done, someone carrying their phone around maybe. I mean, obviously I never personally did these. This is just what I'm imagining by reading this, that where someone carrying their laptop around to show like a virtual reality tour. It's like that's how I imagine that would have worked.
And again, this is new wording, so it's new law, correct?
No, this is just taking stuff from the appeal structure as it exists and just moving it over.
Okay,
So this isn't new.
okay, thanks. I know.
One thing I don't know, which maybe we could learn, is how often is a state of emergency declared? Besides COVID, I don't know if there's been other ones. I don't know.
Flood.
Still.
Well, it's.
We can find out. I appreciate that everyone's hypothesizing, but fun brainstorm. Okay, Representative Feltes.
Well, you mentioned an all hazards event. And I can imagine that's a flood or something like that. But would that cover COVID if we had another pandemic in a state of emergency? Or do we need to clarify that?
I would have to take a look at 20 VSA Chapter 1. That's definitely not my area. So unfortunately, I can't tell you a lot about what goes into that.
Do you mean a state declared state of emergency or a federal?
It's a state declared. I mean, maybe the federal would overlap, and yeah, that's a good point about the floods because there's been national declarations. I think one takeaway though is that this is a more niche area of the whole thing. At least less likely to come up than most of the other stuff.
And this is current law.
It's current law.
Okay, current law. Okay.
Most of what we're going through is current law. The big difference is that we have a regional BCA doing it instead of a BCA. But let's talk about what's being changed. One thing that's being changed is an extension of some dates in the appeals process. So we have one here. The regional board shall schedule meetings to hear and determine appeals made under the subsection no later than 30 days after the last date allowed for notice of appeal. By changing that from 14 to 30, my understanding is that allows them to hear appeals for longer because there was feedback about the volume of appeals. So giving them more days to do it would help, might also help them keep their sanity a little bit.
I think they need more than 30. And do you want to say business days or do you want to?
Representative Bodie.
You know, this is so exciting.
The thing about having a longer date is that we got to get the grand list set at some point so that property tax billing can happen. So that's why there's a timeline. It's able to be a longer timeline because we're changing the grand list date to start January 1 rather than, and that's allowing for some of these things for it to be longer. So these are just the rules for and the timeline, establishing the timeline for a determination by the Regional Board of Civil Authority. There's several provisions about inspections, which are not being changed from current law. That means the regional boards will have to go and do inspections especially when the taxpayer wants that. My understanding is that currently board and regional authority don't bring the whole board out for these things. So there'll be like a subcommittee type thing where they go and do it. And I imagine regional boards would probably follow that same approach, which might be one reason why it might be nice if there's 30 people on the regional board. Might help spread out that workload at least. Okay. Just a lot of current law transferred over. We have another 30 days for allowing. There's a different process here, if I'm recalling the subsection correctly, for the types of appeals that happen when it's not the usual process coming off of setting the grand list, but when there's an adjustment in the middle of the year. There's sections addressing that, and then that again allows a longer period to hear appeals.
Oops, I wasn't here when we started going through this bill, and I don't, maybe you said this, people, I'm not sure, but the way all of these amendments happened was over break. I read through all of the written testimony we received and then written follow-up testimony, and Kirby made those amendments, and then we checked in with PBR and made a little bit more tweaking from there. Just so so folks have context for how this new draft happened. Maybe you already said that.
A little bit.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
I just want to thank if anyone's watching, this is some of the most constructive written testimony I don't think maybe I've gotten in my legislative service. It was incredibly helpful, like just very practical, hands-on, like
Could you run through that list again for me, please?
the list of all the things.
No, the list of all the people that had this interaction.
It was everyone that sent in written testimony. So it's all posted on our page under this thing. It wasn't any like extra emails. It was just all the written testimony. There's a few folks who sent written testimony that I sent like follow-up questions to, but it was just the witnesses that we had in.
Thank you.
I have a note here that we need to add the BCA oath back in. That's something I deleted when BCAs weren't involved. But one of the substantive changes, which I've already told you about, is here on page 11, line 20. Where the reference to the option to go to court at the appealing from the regional BCA is not an option. It's an appeal to the director. And then there's the process for that, which is just translating current law. And we've kept the ability for PBR to kick it over to court, as I mentioned. And I did receive a reply about this. So I'll delete that comment. There's a subsection B here that I was just thinking, like, do I need to remove the reference to court here? And suffice to say, I don't even know if I need to go into the details, but the subsection B is a convoluted way for some taxpayers to have their town appeal on behalf of the town because they think maybe the values are too low in their town. It's not something that anyone I've spoken with is aware has ever happened. But we do have a subsection B here.
And so I think it's useful to have a conversation with Jill when she joins us about whether we think we should even leave this section in statute.
So yeah, but I left it alone, and it does allow municipality to appeal to court. There's no significant changes to the process here. This is just, these are the sections on the appeals handled by PBR. And it eventually gets to mentioning court again because of that ability for PBR to send things to court. We don't have any other major changes beyond as far as this part of the appeals process from the previous version. Okay, here's a new part. As you recall, there's in current law, there's an $8.50 per parcel fee that is paid to municipalities to help with reappraisals and grand list maintenance and other things. We have a couple changes there. One of them is that that per parcel fee is being increased by $1, but at the same time, there's a different $1 per parcel fee that is for assistance with the equalization study.
I guess we should add in equalization if that's into the language too. Sorry, I interrupted your sentence.
No, it's okay.
Sorry, Herbie.
Do this for both.
Okay. So this combines the two, is the idea. With one addition as well, there's this provision at the bottom here that says, provided a municipality shall receive a minimum of X policy decisions to be decided here under this subsection. So that is basically to ensure that municipalities that have a small number of parcels are getting some minimal amount of assistance. Is the idea of having that provision. And that is new in this version.
The question on definition, is a gore a municipality?
Yes. Can't say that I know everything, but like, there are some, exceptional things about how gores are treated, and I can't claim to know everything about that.
They get some kind of minimum help.
Every municipality that is currently receiving a proposal fee will get a minimum amount. I can say that. How it works specifically with gores, I would either go look up or defer to someone who does this more regularly.
Am I mistaken, or is currently the way that the towns get money for reappraisal is through the property transfer tax? And not the general fund?
Wait, could you brief that? I'm sorry.
Is the amount of money that towns get for doing a reappraisal that they accumulate, isn't that through the property transfer tax and not the general fund?
When you say general fund, you mean this per parcel fee?
Yeah,
I would have to look at that and I would have to ask JFO what the exact numbers are, but I think that we could find that out.
because this would be a change, if it is, I believe. If that per parcel amount came from the general fund. I don't think,
Oh, I think we've talked about this before where
I think it does.
that's another thing that I would like to double check with JFO. No, it says it right there in front of our faces. It says from the general fund. Then close
And that's
the
existing
case
law.
on that one.
what's that?
This is existing law. The only thing that's changed is the number.
Yeah, I mean, the per parcel fees is existing law. This is just changing them. Yeah, it says right there in subsection A, a municipality shall be paid $9.50 per grand list parcel per year from the general fund to be used only for reappraisal, costs related to reappraisal of its grand list properties and for maintenance of the grand list.
Okay, I got that from, thanks.
And
We are
then,
gonna spend some time talking about the water. Clean water fee, and so we'll get a fun dive into that very strange way that the property transfer tax is divided up. I think that will be like Wednesday. I know that's Representative Brannigan's favorite part of the year, so.
I've got it in my book. Very much looking forward to it.
are you having like Ted come in or is Mike O'Grady?
It'll be both of them.
Fun. Yeah.
Okay.
There was a lot of property transfer tax stuff last session,
Sure
so
was.
good for a while. So this is not changed. There's just unnecessary language that's removed. because of PBR taking over reappraisals. This is stuff about the reappraisal orders and stuff like that. It will be gone. Then we have the January 1 grand list day here in section 4. This is not new. There's a lot of conforming changes yet to be done to adapt the whole timeline to that January 1 day. Here on page 20 is where we have the equalization study fee removed. Then there's the section of law on grievances. So this kind of partners with the other appeals stuff we were talking about before, just not in the right order, because we're looking now at the first step, which is keeping the May 20 day. This is not new. At least I don't think so. I think this was in the previous version. Keeping the May 20 day for grievances, which gives, but with that January 1 day being the starting point, giving more time for that. Adding in assessors where appropriate here. And otherwise, pretty much keeping this the same as it currently functions. The grievances. I think this version has the change where at one point we were having municipalities take their reappraisal funds and transfer them to PBR because PBR will be taking that over. We've dropped that. Municipalities will just be able to keep that money. So what we do have for work with the transition is that a municipality required to reappraise will not be required starting whenever you decide to start doing that. Like it'll have an effective date. This could be on passage or whenever you decide that we'll stop having municipalities be forced to reappraise because it's going to transition over to PBR. So we have that provision, but we also have a modification to that, provided existing reappraisal orders shall stand. So that's what this draft has. In other words, municipalities that are already who have an order and are already in the process of doing a reappraisal won't be compelled to stop that. They'll finish that work. There just won't be any new ones ordered. And then this provision just goes along with that. The PBR will not order anymore. And it's written here to say before January 1, 2027, but I think that had to do with previous versions. I should probably change that language because at this point, there won't be any orders at all because municipalities won't be charged with that. And then that leads us to another new part, section 8, on line 6 of page 22. This is out of feedback that there was a desire for a stakeholder group to meet to have some input on the guidelines and procedures and any other rulemaking that's also done to effectuate making this transition and going into this new system. So we just have pretty short directive that PBR will convene a stakeholder group to advise on those things.
Just right back on number 2, they have above, the director of property evaluation review shall not order any new appraisals. And that's really to not order a municipality to order any new appraisals, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to tweak that. That was based on a completely different version of this when we had a different structure and idea in mind. Now that things have evolved, that's
Okay.
It may not even be necessary.
Right, okay.
And I still have the section here about conforming changes, but we've talked about that a lot. There's a lot to be done. And I have some of the things that need to be changed listed here. And that's it. That's this version of the bill, and hopefully I highlighted every response we've made to feedback so far.
Thank you, Kirby. Really appreciate your time. Maybe Jill, if you want to join us and share whatever it was you'd like to share. I'm happy to start with your thoughts, and then I know we've sort of tossed random questions into the room since you joined us, but we can get to those last.
Good afternoon. My name is Jill Remick. I'm the Director of Property Valuation and Review at the Tax Department. We were asked to come in and respond to the latest draft for the transition we're in right now to move to a statewide reappraisal system. Definitely a lot going on here. So I think we're moving in a good direction, but there are still a lot of questions or things we want to ask about or get clarity on. We are really stoked to see the stakeholder group listed here. I think that's one of the major recommendations from our report that we gave, just because we literally aren't experts in how to like share contracts across a town, for example, or how to staff a regional board of civil authority. So there's a lot of places there where we would really want to have time with the folks actually doing the work right now on how the mechanics of how that could work. It's hard to sort of pick a particular structure and go down that path without involving the folks who are going to need to do a lot of that work. So happy to see that piece in there. I think another concern I still have that I'm not sure what the answer is I still am getting some towns that aren't able to find anyone to help. So I think this is moving in that direction, but still trying to sort of picture how we could help some of the smallest towns get reappraisal help. And I think moving to the cycle and moving to some sort of grouping on a regular cycle is the key to that, which is good. I was glad to hear you folks talk about the $1 for the equalization study, because we very much still need to do the equalization study. And $1 per parcel even is not a whole lot. So we don't want to lose that requirement that towns assist us with the equalization study still. And just for folks' awareness, the equalization study is the annual review of all the sales that have occurred in the past 3 years. That's an analysis of what the real estate market is doing that leads to the CLA and the COD. So it is still a very important part of our tax structure and very important work that that towns need to do and that we would want to work with them on. So we would definitely not want to lose a per parcel payment to the towns for that work. Let's see. So another piece that I think still we're trying to wrestle with is sort of where the line between a state employee and the municipality would fall. So this is, like I said, I think we're thinking this is moving in the right direction. The district advisor description of having a DA assigned to each region sounds great. We don't have that many people right now. And the workload is pretty significant. And I think having them also responsible for staffing that appeals board is a lot. I think that's more than one person could do.
More than one person per region?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
I also wondered, and these are two related questions. One is, do you also need staff to coordinate the DAs? And then, so in addition to this, to realistically do this, do you need another person who supervises them? And with that, are there also commonly accepted practices for overseeing, I don't know what you would call it in tax, but inter-rater reliability across different assessors? I mean, what's the mechanism to ensure that there's parity across those DAs?
Right. It's a combination of, you mean in the skill of the individual or in the work that they need to do to measure?
Right. I mean, it's at both levels. I mean, you need for public assurance, you need both reliability within the DA district, and then you also need it across the DAs and their regions. So there's two kinds of inter-rater reliability. And that's why I'm wondering if this is adequate staffing.
Yeah. So, I think that's one of the few good things about even going to regional, that Vermont is small because we would be still a small team that would have some sort of a statewide system. We are very much deferential to like IAAO standards and IAAO principles. There's also the Lincoln Land Institute that I'm sure you folks have heard from, have some really fantastic tools to measure equity and outcomes for statistical analysis that we don't necessarily have, but we could use those tools. We wouldn't want to build anything from scratch or have different regions doing things differently.
And I guess the reason I'm asking is because that one piece of testimony we got was so striking that we seem to have a pattern of pervasive overassessment of lower end houses.
Okay. I can't think of,
Okay.
I can't think of
Yeah.
what that testimony was, so I'm sorry.
It's the guy who brought it from, I think. I'll find it for you.
Okay.
Do you mean the?
Oh, the land values?
Yeah.
The,
Mr. Landon.
statistics lesson?
Yeah,
Oh, right, okay, so,
which suggests we do have a problem, actually, and so, I guess that's.
I think the problem he was just like sort of the writ large across the state, across the country problem he was describing with a lot of math is really one of the key problems we're trying to solve in this bill that I think PBR has been working with us on for a while.
We need to be doing
Absolutely.
interreligious oversight to actually ensure that you're addressing the problem that he was describing.
it would be fantastic to have help with I don't know if folks know John Fike, he's the Reading lister from a long, long time ago. I have his quote up that says, it's math, up one side and down the other. Like, we don't need more ways to sort of subjectively make decisions. We need to be able to use the data to tell us what we need to know, and we don't have that right now. Like, we don't. We have a pretty minimal, I would say, reappraisal evaluation test that we run statistically to see how it's going. And of course, I think, as I told you folks, like, the smaller towns with fewer sales have more volatility. So I do think part of, if we really want to accomplish sort of like statewide equity, fairness, transparency, and like, confidence in our property reappraisal statewide, we need to use the data and not just keep trying to do things the hard way, because it's hard right now. Like, we don't have enough people to do any of that kind of we know it can be done, but it's not something we can do on top of everything else. The district advisors literally right now, and we have 6 of them, and they're run ragged, literally going around the state to try to help towns find 411s, value current use properties, download homesteads, learn how to use the software. We don't have that, and I think that could help make this whole statewide picture a lot better, to have that help. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. And I did want to mention the per parcel payments are out of the general fund currently. Yeah. The only piece that comes from us that's a payment to the municipalities now, that's from the ed fund, is if there is a settlement that meets that 5412. Like, if the municipality basically defended a value all the way to the end, then there is money to help make them whole for their ed fund dollars that they may have missed out on. The idea being it helps incentivize the municipality to see it through rather than settle for a lower amount. There's a program we have at PBR now to help them do that.
So the litigation assistance.
Yeah, and then we have litigation assistance. So right now, it's kind of neat. We have a few different municipalities that have reached out to us to take advantage of that. So basically, the state, the legislature has created this program, and we've got 2 folks, an attorney and a assessor, focusing on lining up those municipalities with those sort of specialty appraisers. So the ones that come to mind right now, there's vacant colleges. There's a few vacant colleges around Vermont. It's kind of a unique property, and yet has lots of potential uses. So it's not something you just want to sort of take a stab at. It's something you want someone who's in that work to do. So we're finding people to help towns do that work. So that sort of helps both the municipal grant list and the education grant list stay whole. Right, so fundamentally, who can own a contract, who can execute a contract? I was finding myself while I was sitting over there sort of crossing out district advisor with PBR or the state or something, or municipality, because I don't think you want to have it be an individual employee. And, it comes back to who is the entity that would actually sort of sign those contracts. If it's the state, then it can be the state. And if it's the regional assessment district, then it should be that regional assessment district. Right now, it's municipality by municipality. So just more work to do in that conversation. I have to clear up how to execute those contracts. and not put the, I met with the Vermont Listers Association yesterday, and like, one of the questions was a good one. They sort of said, so is this putting us as employees of the district advisor? Who, the contract assessors right now who do reappraisals do work with the lister and assessor, so who's supporting the contractor in that work? Because we don't have, that would need to still be someone at the municipal level providing that information to the reappraisal firm.
Especially if you're doing it at the regional level, then you have to spell out what towns you're doing the appraisal for at that time, right? Everybody has to help.
So I mean, I heard on VPR that there are things like intermunicipal contracts. There are ways to do that, but that's why we need municipalities to help us, the LCT and others to help us figure how, the logistics of that. Can't recall, forgive me, if it's in the draft or not, or if it's just something I jumped up. I think if one of the other main goals of this whole sort of push was to try to help get folks the training and certification they need, so we can have really, like, they can be compensated for and have a good quality, like, career path in this work, because it's very much needed. So I have sort of been toying with the idea of looking at what the Secretary of State's office has for licensure for real estate appraisal. It is a little different, but there's a similarity. So we at PVR are currently standing up the Act 68 lister and assessor certification program. It had been voluntary, and now I think as of 2026, it will be required. So we're mapping out what those certifications are. And it's a lot of continuing education, right? So is there a way we can have as much of that as possible overlap, and then maybe people can also take their real estate appraiser license and then.
Oh, cool. It's a great idea.
Pretty good, because it's a lot of time to do all these courses. Let's see. Oh yeah, and so then again, like the appeal structure, I definitely think I would want to have, like Abby Shepherd, our senior fiscal or legal analyst, or somebody come in, because the whole appeal structure and how the board gets rolled up. And who helps them. I mean, I keep thinking of it because I'm on a school board and have worked with the State Board of Education. Like, it's work to support the board to make sure agendas are posted and make sure meeting minutes are taken. Make sure the people know, like, it's administrative support that would really need to be, like ironed out and compensated for. Yeah, and so I think I think we've already sort of touched on a bit. I think the staffing part, right? We could not take this and do this right now. We would need folks per district. We would need, some good, robust statistical and also reappraisal analysis for people. Other states do this. Other states do the appeals in a grouping. Other states do have the appraisals done at the county or district level. It's not a unique construct, quite the opposite. So there is a way to do it, but we need to build that and like support it adequately. And then let's see. Sorry, and I'm happy to sort of take other questions if things come up, but I think those are sort of the main things I wanted to make sure. Like, we're moving, but there's still a lot of pieces and parts to talk through.
Two things that would be helpful, not for you to answer now, is to get more clear on staffing as we go. And then to get more clear on dates. I mean, of course, you would want the working group to be effective soon. I've been imagining July of, I can't even say it right now. I can't do the math. Like a year and a half from now,
Do you need dates for?
when the whole regional system was actually started.
Okay.
July 1, 2027.
I think I mean July 21st. I think I mean July 1, 2027, yes, or maybe July 1, 2020. I'm having a fiscal year.
26 is 1 year.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And the good thing is, like I said, I think the last time I was in here, like there are a lot of towns. I think there's 38 or so reappraising in 2025. That's great. So I think the language that passed in 68 did provide for that kind of like grace period, or rather sort of get to the back of the line if you've made, right? You're not, just because you haven't been this grouping, like it's going to take years to sort of get everyone lined up, but it's starting to gel. We're starting to get more reappraisals done. And since we do have that discretion, so I'm not saying, well, you happen to be in the group that's supposed to do it in 2026, so get right out there, that won't happen.
Curiosity question related to the issue of the GORs and the unorganized towns. Is Essex County big enough, or should we be thinking of Essex County as part of someplace else because of that problem of small n?
And only because I'm from St. Jay and I went to school at Linden, I feel like Essex and Caledonia could probably, or Orleans and Essex.
Kind of where I was headed.
Together.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of driving. Yeah, it could be, or, I liked where Kirby was going to, of like, there may be times where you can share more than others. I mean, our district advisor map is, there are, right, you can sort of see the regions that only 6 of them have, but there's a bigger region up there just because the parcel count is smaller. But I mean, she's got a lot of ground to cover. Yeah.
Yeah, Representative
I'm sure, I think I remember, I believe it was maybe an assessor from Burlington who talked about how the $8.50 per parcel wasn't even enough to cover nearly what they were going to have to do to assess. So if that's the case, and it even goes up to $9.50, which I'm sure, who picks up the extra? I mean, it sounds to me like the city does now, but is the state gonna be on the hook now for any additional?
Can I build out that question a little bit more? Is that okay with you?
Well, maybe I've got it wrong, but I thought the assessor from Burlington said that it was way over an $8.50 per parcel amount for a break in certain years. So again, they pick up the tab, the city.
So I was imagining that the 850 is actually for grand list maintenance and all the rest, and the paying for the contractor actually comes out of PBR.
There are some benefits to that, because the problem is, I've for years sort of been like, the per parcel payment's not high enough, it hasn't changed since 2005, so even just inflation wise, I think it should be like 12 or 13 or something like that. But there also is a lot of it out there unspent because we can't find firms to do the work, so a lot of towns are having to hold that for a long period of time. So I love that idea, because that does increase their grand list support. And then only what is actually spent on reappraisals would get spent when there was reappraisal completed. That's not a bad idea. I hadn't thought about that. But that's, right now, it's $9.50 total for all that stuff. And so the municipality definitely does pay for that. And I think that was originally built on a 10-year reappraisal cycle that it'd be 50-50. So now we've moved to a 6-year, which is a good thing, but the per parcel payment didn't change. So now it's even more, if nothing else happens, it is more of a, because it's like $100 a parcel to do a reappraisal, right?
So it's more on the municipalities.
Mhm.
Okay.
But I think the way that, I think we need to get, the towns need more for just grand list maintenance than they have right now with loan reappraisal. So getting clear on sort of what the cost would look like sitting at the tax department. And that's not, that wouldn't be an expense this next fiscal year.
I guess I'm confused, because again, that amount I didn't think was for general maintenance of the grand list.
Historically, no. In this bill, yes. Inside my imagination. Representative Higley. So it'd be reappraisal support. It wouldn't be reappraisal. It's right, as you said, the towns are still going to need to support the reappraisal process, right? And that will take time and human power, right? And grand list maintenance takes time and human power, and the equalization study, all those things are going to, the towns need funding for that. Representative Bodie.
Thank you. So, you were saying where you grew up and I'm not sure what, but, I was thinking, it's not just the number of parcels. It could be the kind of parcels. Like, I don't know how much time it takes to appraise and reappraise acres and acres of forest land versus houses that are situated close to each other in a town versus houses that are spread around or little farms. So I wonder, if you just think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I think the tools are so exciting. Like, I think the current use, it's been really helpful to have Google Earth. Because we can actually see like where the pasture stops and the animal stopped walking, or, like you can see a lot. So I don't know how, I think the reappraisal firms probably take that into account, what they can check out. And it helps any land that's in current use, obviously the forest, we have maps and things like that too that are kept up to date. But yeah, certainly like if you're a really small town that has a nice neat little village, that's very easy to, well, it's easier to sort of keep track of things, but that's not necessarily the case with a lot of Vermont, but
So so you get the reason I'm saying this, I don't know. Is that how everything is staffed may have to do with how land is used, parcels are used, so.
yeah, well, and that's sort of one of the fun things I've learned about property, like assessment, is it's like the outside sort of tromping around is like a really nice part of it, but there's a whole lot of work that happens at a computer with like CAMA systems and land schedules and things like that in data. So it's not all requiring literal bouncing around, but no, absolutely. There's definitely some towns.
Really,
And
I'm
some
talking
towns,
about brain power, not about.
yes, okay, brain power. Yeah, and there are very unique and interesting properties in some very small towns too, that's a lot of work. That's a complex property to try to figure out and defend the values. There's all kinds of different things.
We had one outstanding question about, there's a section about if townspeople think that their neighbor's not getting appraised at a high enough value, they can. Should we leave that in or take it out?
Yeah, we talked with, we got Kirby's question. We were talking about that with our legal staff and nobody's ever seen anyone use it. I definitely get complaints from individual taxpayers.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah. Saying, I'm not complaining about my assessment. That guy is getting away with something, or that person built that, or they don't live, we do get that, but I'm guessing this must have come from some sort of specific example where there was some sort of pretty widespread something pretty egregious, because 3% of the grand list might not sound like a lot, but it's a lot. So I think we could leave it and worry if we take it out, someone will come along who that applies to, and we've taken that away. I feel like I'm jinxing myself by saying that, but we haven't seen it get used yet.
I think you should.
I'm sure. I guess
Yes.
a question I've got is, do you feel comfortable with, so this is under Regional Assessment District Advisor, shall facilitate the full reappraisal, but ensure municipal grand lists are maintained accurately. That to me, I mean, that's the lister or assessor's job in the town. And I just wonder what your feelings are as to that wording. Because that's, to me, that's not just a one-day look at somebody's grand list to understand that it's been maintained accurately.
Yeah. That section is, you can probably see all the red I have on my. Lots of questions about that, because I would be very worried about having a state employee who's just doing their job on their hourly rate to be held responsibly, like legally, for some of these pieces. Right now, they're advisors. They can advise, they can strongly suggest, they can, cajole, they can answer questions, but it is a policy decision that this group is going to have to make about, like, I love the idea of us being able to staff better to help towns do this work. That's what I would like to see happen. I don't think we want to put a state employee in the position of like oversight or decisions. PVR director, I can take it. That's the director has like responsibility under the statute as it exists, that I can, if there's something egregious, I can come in there. But I really would love to see the line drawn of, okay, you've got folks doing the grand list maintenance in the municipality at the local level, and then you've got really good support from the state. Because if that's the avenue we're going in, where we're going to keep having folks doing the grand list maintenance, then we would love to help them more than we're able to, as we try really hard. But it would be helping, not managing or overseeing or taking legal responsibility for things.
Great.
Totally.
Representative, if you could,
Quiet out.
or just wait to be ignored, be free to speak, because that's our way.
Right.
I feel like there were some other outstanding questions, the emergency thing, and what were the other outstanding questions that were more Jill questions while Kirby was?
I know, I tried to write down when you folks had questions.
I had some regional assessment The Board of Civil Authorities one, but she's answered them.
Okay, great.
Oh, that was another question I had. I don't know, and this might be going down the wordsmithing road, so maybe, but, because you had a witness submit written testimony that had a lot of interesting points in it that I hadn't really thought of from a larger municipality. That maybe it's a Board of Tax Appeals, that you sort of draw that delineation, because the BCA, my understanding is, has lots of other things. that they're
Yeah.
responsible for at the local
I think
level.
it's really good, just call it a whole other thing.
So it's like a Board of Appeals or
Mhm.
something like that to make that clear what they are and are not responsible.
Or maybe even like a third name. Thank you, that's a great idea.
That's probably not what.
No, think about
Thank you.
all the people and whether all those people would work out well altogether.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, other places do that.
Yeah.
But I think we need more, like,
Mm.
what does that look like? I almost think our IAA report might have had some examples from states, but,
I think it did, but there's,
yeah. I mean, I'm on the school board here in Montpelier, and then we're Montpelier Roxbury School District, so we have 2 Roxbury members of the 9-member board, but their votes are half a vote. It's like a proportioned vote. But to oversee that,
work out.
it's actually fine, because we work
Really?
really hard as if I think we're a pretty high functioning board, so we work really hard to not ever really think about it that way. But having trying to pull together 37 people to hear more appeals is a lot. And someone else pointed out to me today at Vala that every 2 years, I guess, the BCA is constituted, so there would be a pretty regular turnover. So again, sort of back to the like logistics of tracking.
And that's all stuff that we could. You could work that out in the working group and then advise us on ways we could make changes, and we can leave some of that.
Thank you.
It's related, but tangentially. To what degree are contracts with reappraisal firms, how much do they vary based on the quality of the data of the towns in which they're doing the reappraisal? So do they know ahead of time? Because there are some that are extremely well maintained and right spot on, and there are some that haven't been updated in a long, long time. The data is just really hard to put in the right system. How much does it vary from town to town, and do the appraising firms take that into account?
Yeah, we did sort of a roundtable with the firms this summer, and it does vary a lot. And sort of seems like the ideal scenario that works the best is that there's sort of an ongoing long-term relationship between the two entities, so that they're kind of on the same page. They did their reappraisal the last time, so they know how to, they know how to work with that. Sometimes it involves like sort of wholesale, like transferring the information into a new CAMA system so they do try to take that into account. And they have said that very clearly, right? That like, if you come in and you have a town full of really old Granless information that requires a lot of work, you're going to bid higher on that than if it's like, well, this is the town I've been working with annually already, and come in and, it is different. And I think that's part of it, right? And so then it perpetuates itself. If you're a town that can't find a reappraisal contractor, you can't find anyone to be your lister. Every year that goes by, that data gets less and less accurate. And then it's harder when somebody comes in as the new lister assessor or the new contractor and says, okay, I've got a lot of work to do. So yeah, it does. I think they do take that into account. Yeah.
So thinking ideally, if the new training requirements, certifications, everything else end up with more towns being staffed ably,
Yes.
then the actual overall appraisal costs go down.
Right. Yeah, I think it, right now, a lot of, we do a ton of trainings and a lot of, and free of charge, and a lot of listers and assessors take them, but it generally takes them taking time out of their day job, for example, and it's a lot of hours. So if it becomes like a professional certification and that you're compensated appropriately for that, that makes it more appealing, but also lets you keep really good people long-term who can make a career out of it, or at least a great retirement side gig. But right now it's a big time commitment with varying degrees of ability to keep doing it. Yeah.
Are there things that came up that we covered all? Because that way we're like 3 minutes to 4, so it'd be kind of delightful if.
I'm happy to try to help clean up the findings if that's helpful. I think.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think we debated whether we should include the findings from last year's
Mhm.
bill or not in these findings, so to have some continuity. So happy to have you add to it if you want to from that.
Yeah, and I think the other sort of lenses I try to look at this through is something that can actually be doable. Like if we can come up with a really great plan, but if we have no people or resources to do it, then we're setting ourselves up for problems. And also just that not all towns are created equal and not all towns need help. Some towns are just fine. And so how do we help the ones that really do need our help without losing really good people who want to do this work? Okay.
Okay, if and when we get this narrowed down some, I'm assuming there'll be a joint fiscal note on it as well.
This is likely gonna go into the education bill. This is likely gonna go into the education bill. I'm trying to make my gesture of the education bill. So we would have 3 different pieces of property tax reform all happening in the same bill with the same implementation timeline,
Great.
with one nightmare fiscal note.
Great words.
Consent wise, put all that together.
It's all, in talking to the drafters about it, it's actually very hard for them to be drafting them in isolation from each other, and they're only doing it to make our brains be able to function a little better, but they do all really depend on each other in pretty significant ways that we could talk about another day. Cool. Thank you, Jill. Really appreciate your time. Folks, we are done for today. And tomorrow we are back here at 9 a.m. We're going to hear from 2 of our colleagues about bills they have, almost identical bills they have. So I don't know if they're going to combine their testimony with each other or not. And then we're going to come back to our income tax credit bill and have a vote warned for that. So please check in with me if you want to check in with me about anything related to that. And then after lunch, we are hearing 2 bills that have come over, one from GovOps and one from Commerce, and potentially voting those out same day if possible. I'm not sure yet. Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Those 2 bills are all we have tomorrow afternoon.